Hello everyone, this is the second video I'm posting of a series on faith, the acronym that I've been talking about. And yesterday I posted a video on Facebook and we started with the F that stands for focus. Perhaps you remember from yesterday that I was talking so much about faith and fear. Many people today, they're talking about fear and fear mongering and people that are worried about what the future might bring. And probably when you watch the news, there are many reasons to be fearful. And I also said, and that was obviously the first letter in the acronym of faith, is that it's important to keep our eyes focused on Jesus Christ. Because in the midst of so much unknown factors, we can easily look into the day of tomorrow and our focus can be on the news and can be on many other things. And God is literally calling us today to focus on Him. So that's the first thing that's very important to understand. We don't feel overwhelmed without any reason. There are reasons for it sometimes that we feel fearful. It's probably because our focus is first of all on the negativity of the stuff that's happening around us. Today I would like to think about the second letter of everything that's happening, and that is abide. So to abide, well, what does that mean? I mean, the word abide in English isn't necessarily something that we use a lot in the English language. Abide, it almost sounds like an old word. Like, why would you be using that word? Are there other perhaps words that you can perhaps use for that? And I just looked it up in the dictionary quickly, and I found a few words that probably we can relate to much easier. Think of words like to bear, or to suffer, or to endure, or even to tolerate. Now all of a sudden the word to abide is something we can very well relate to. Never in history of the world have many people been confined into their own homes. Here in Australia it's happening. We heard recently of the news that's happening in India, where 1.3 billion people are suddenly confined to their homes. And it's happening in many other places as well. Never ever has that happened in human history. Suddenly people are abiding at home. They're enduring a tough time by staying at home and trying to stay away from people. And they wonder when that time will eventually end. Some people are even driven to despair. They might be losing their jobs in the process, or wondering how they will get through, and their heart becomes very anxious, fearful, and even to the point of becoming depressed because of everything that's happening around them. I guess there are many ways of abiding. And probably we need to look at the stuff that we are abiding in that will matter very much. For instance, a lot of people, when they stay at home, they basically just turn on their TV screen and they watch Netflix, and they go on a binge watching of whatever the Netflix series that might be on. And for as much as I love myself to watch a movie or a program, we all understand that just spending hours and hours of time in activities that ultimately drain us even more than fulfill us is not the kind of abiding that is probably going to help us. Others, they fill their minds, they abide so much in the news that's out there. There is so much news, whether it's on TV or on YouTube or somewhere else, that is just making people extremely fearful. Extremely fearful. You see it all around us. Other people, they abide, but they abide in a way of thinking that is actually pushing everything aside. They rationalize their fears. It's like, well, you know what? I'm a young person. This virus will never ever catch me. But deep down from the inside, that may not be something that their heart is really saying. It reminds me of this expression that I try to drown my own sorrows, my own fears, but my fears, my sorrows, they learn to swim. You know, it doesn't help us to abide in the stuff and just to all the time look for things that just make us afraid. Those fears will eventually start creeping up into our own hearts as well. And just to rationalize it or to fall into addictive behavior is not necessarily something that's going to help us. So there are probably better ways of killing our time. Many people are killing their time try to see it through. They might be working from home, but then suddenly they have to deal with family situations, and they wonder, it's like, okay, how am I going to go through this? These forced quarantine measures that are being implemented in many countries is basically a frontal attack on something that is so pervasive in many people's lives. It's called busyness. Many people are busy, and all of a sudden, all of us, we are stopped in our tracks and we are forced to deal with that busyness of life. Well, all of a sudden the productivity is going down and we're sitting here and we wonder what is going on suddenly from the inside. Because when the busyness of life disappears, what is then still left there? Well, I think for many people, all of a sudden they start to come in touch with the busyness and the screaming from the inside for love, for affection, for meaning, and for purpose. And they try to connect, or they try to push out that voice that's calling for their attention one way or another. I must confess that for me personally this time, and I think many pastors that are watching this video can easily agree with this, these are times that is extremely hard. Even for pastors, it's like, oh, all of a sudden congregation have to close, and the hugs and the times that we can learn together and have fellowship with one another, all of a sudden that all changes. What do you do now? Well, it doesn't help for us, and it's not just for pastors and leaders, it's for many people to succumb to fear or try to drown out those voices of what is going on around us. It's no longer business as usual. Today, it's a time where we need to face our fears, one way or another. And let me tell you, fear is probably the biggest word that is going out there today. Fear, worry, anxiety, even depression. It reminds me of my own life. When I was born and I was raised not in a Christian home, for many, many years, I struggled with fear, big time. Big time. As a child, I would be lying in bed, and it would be probably the silly stories, and people can relate to it one way or another, but I would be afraid of the dark, and I would keep the light on for many hours, till deep in the night, just because I was afraid. Now fast forward just a few years, became a teenager, and instead of being afraid of the dark, I was afraid of many other things in life. Afraid of having a future where I would be able to provide for my family, to even have a family, to even know who I really am. And I struggled with my own self-esteem, self-worth, self-image. It's stuff that I had to deal with. And many times when the pressure would be on, and that so it could be different things in life, that would trigger that fear. And many times in life, I struggled big time with panic and with fear, to the point that I said to myself, listen, I don't want to live that life anymore. Not like that. Even when I became a Christian, I only became a Christian when I was 17 years old, I realized, no, I don't want to continue to live that way. I cannot be all the time succumbing into fear. Now fast forward to 2020. I have learned over time, and it's been a process of falling down and getting up again, to learn to face my fears. I see today many people looking for answers. Many people all around the world being extremely fearful. And it brings me to an understanding of my own fears as well, where I draw my strength from. The Word of God says this, and this is very important, and I hear people quoting this psalm very often lately. It says this in Psalms 91 verse 1. It says this, "He who dwells in the shelter of the Most High will abide in the shadow of the Almighty." You know, our safety is first of all in God, in Him, and in Him alone. Many people are rushing to a myriad of strategies to sit this period out, to see it through. And it's of course good to plan for the future. Some people are stockpiling some extra food, and even though you don't want to be hoarding and entering into a panic mode, it is good to plan for the future. But often it is fueled by anxiety, fear. Jesus himself said something very important just before he went to the cross. And I will read those words. You can read them in John chapter 15. He says this, "I am the vine, and you are the branches. Whoever abides in me and I in him, he is it that bears much fruit. For apart from you, you cannot do nothing. If anyone does not abide in me, he is thrown away like a branch and withers. And the branches are gathered, thrown into the fire, and burned. If you abide in me, my words abide in you. Ask whatever you wish, and it will be done for you. You see that here, Jesus himself, I will come to the Apostle Paul still, but Jesus himself is saying, listen, if you abide in me, if you stay connected to me, if you are under the protection of myself as a person, then you will be okay, and you will be even very fruitful. I'm saying that to leaders and pastors also. I'm myself part of that group of people, and people that make decisions over many things in life and that have influence upon people. We can only be fruitful in this time where we're totally out of our comfort zone by the measure that we are relating to God and spending time with Him. I have decided for myself, I'm not waking up any more days just to start the day and just see what happens. I need to start the day with God. I need to start and saying, God, help me through this day. I'm abiding in you. It reminds me also this time that we're living now the end of March, and soon Christians are celebrating the festival of the party of Passover. We also know it as Easter, or perhaps Resurrection Sunday, as some people know it. It's the greatest gift that God could give to us Christians, to us people, Himself. He died for our sins. He died because He saw something in you and me that was so precious that He wanted to restore. He wanted to restore a relationship that was lost, that was severe because of disobedience, and He wanted to have that desperately back again. That started first of all with the people of Israel that were in slavery in Egypt. Many people were despair. They were living under very harsh circumstances, and they did not see a future, not for themselves, not even for their children. Many people today, they don't see a future for themselves or for their children. They see the stock markets plunging. They wonder when the big crash will come, if it hasn't already arrived. And they think, where is this all going? I myself also a father of 3 children, and I obviously would like to give them the best future possible. But I also came to the understanding that there are certain things that are simply not in my control. For you as a parent that are perhaps worried about your safety, the well-being of your child that is perhaps still going to school, please know that God is taking care of your child. God is still protecting your child. Like He is passing over, like He is protecting the Israelites, He is also protecting those that say, like, yes, I want to follow you, I want to abide in you. My question for you for today is simply this. How does your abiding look like? How are you enduring these times? Does your eye go constantly to the bad stuff that is out there, the news, and does it make your heart constantly fearful, whether you acknowledge it or not? Or does your mind perhaps wander off all the time and try to shut out all the voices by just keeping yourself entertained and busy, even though you know you can't be busy in the physical world? Now, probably for us, abiding needs to look very different. Abiding is not something that just happens by chance. We have to be intentional about it. And here I come to the words of the Apostle Paul that said this. If then you have been raised with Christ, seek the things that are above, where Christ is seated at the right hand of God. Set your minds on the things that are above, not on the things that are on the earth. For you have died, and your life is hidden with Christ in God. When Christ, who is your life, appears, then you also will appear with Him in glory. And we can read it in Colossians 3, the first 4 verses. You know, your life is so precious to God. He knows you intimately. He knows your struggles. He knows your fears. He's not ashamed of them. He knows them. But it even gets better than that. He wants you to know Him personally as well. And there are very simple ways to start doing that. By simply inviting Him. So like, yes, Lord, I want to know you. Dwell in His Word. Read His Word. The Bible is not an impossible book to read. Start simple. Start with somewhere perhaps in the New Testament. Read one of the Gospels and go slowly. And don't beat yourself up if there are things that you might not understand. And you will see that over time, that the worry and that little voice that's telling you, I can't make it, this coronavirus is going to get me, is going to subside. Worship Him. Maybe you're a bad singer. It doesn't always need to be with your voice. But you can worship Him in your heart. Just put on some songs. Fill your room with the presence of God. And talk to Him. He really wants to listen. You're not just talking to the wall or to the ceiling. He is present. He is present here in this room. He is speaking to my heart. And He wants to speak to your heart as well. So finally, and here I'm concluding, with the words of Joshua, I'm simply saying this: be strong and courageous. The times are ahead. Yes, they are tough. They're difficult. But as you abide in Him, as you stay connected in Him, as you endure these times with Him, He will see you through. I wish you a beautiful day. And stay strong, my friends. God bless you.